We love you.
It's very obvious. Wow. The energy is just so smart.
So we've been doing this ministry thing for almost 30 years. And so now we know less than ever how to do this. Because as you were saying about Paul, and just I want to tell you about Paul Hasselbach.
Yeah.
Many years ago, so it was early 90s, Hal was working as a sort of an interim ministry for the English language in Puerto Rico. And he met Paul, who was just starting to come to the Unity Church in Puerto Rico. And Hal talked to him and tried to discourage him. And now look at him. So,
just don't pay any attention to me.
Oh, gosh. So we used to do this together often. Speak together, banter, prepare something. And then 4 years ago this week, Hal had a stroke and is left with something called aphasia. So while Hal is really very functional and the same as he's always been, sometimes his language is off. And so he'll say up for down. Yesterday we had this long thing about the door being open and closed, because we're babysitting Cinder's dog. And we had the door open or closed, and Hal was, it was just the language thing. We were on the same page. So that happens a lot. And the other thing is he can't really read the way he did, and he also can't prepare notes and lessons the way he did. So I've prepared something, but we have no idea how it's going to go because we want to kind of be together. And I know Hal was here with you last year, about this time, I think, and was able to just share from his heart. So, it's kind of a happening. It's a happening because it's so palatable. And what I've been learning is I can't do things the way I used to do them. I can't prepare something and then present it. It's really about the authenticity of the moment. Isn't that right?
Exactly.
Would you like to say something before I go with my plan a little bit? Because we have a slide, but I'm waiting for...
I think it'll just come up there. I think that it's a real challenge for me, for whatever that is. It's like, I only spoke last time when I was here, and before that I hadn't, and then I haven't done anything. So it's the first time again that I'm going to share something, and I'm not sure what it's going to be. But I'm a little nervous about that. It's just for whatever happens, because I know better, but the experience of just not certain of everything comes in my brain, comes in my way. And so I just wanted to just share that's kind of what happens to me, and I don't know what will develop here, but it will be the right thing as you talk about our work here in Unity. So it's kind of different to know that in a different way than consciously, because we decide what we want to say or what we do, and we prepare and we do all those things that we do in everyday life. But what really happens is what's true and what comes there, and to be able to come to that and share that as it exists is a wonderful gift. And I don't know what else to say.
When we graduated from Unity School in 1991, Mike Moran, did you know Mike and Faith Moran? They told us that our ministry would be the us. It wasn't anything we thought it was going to be, it was just who we are, and that's been a wonderful thing in our lives. So let's see our first. In 1960, India gave the United States the gift of a white tiger named Mohina. Are you familiar with that? No. Right, and she was just this wonderful tiger, and they put her in the Washington National Zoo in a 12 by 12 cage, and there she was for lots of years. And she paced back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in the figure 8 for years. And then some far-seeing naturalists said, let's build her a beautiful, lush environment that's more like her natural habitat. with ponds and hills and grassy areas. So many acres, they created this area for her. And one day, with a lot of pomp and circumstance, she was led into her new home. And what she did was go to one corner of the enclosure and start pacing that same figure 8 in a 12 by 12 pattern for the rest of her life, until the grass was worn bare and until the last day of her life. So that's a really sad story, and it's one we can really relate to, because at that point, the bars were not external anymore, but internal in her mind. And we were thinking about choice, and we were thinking about sacred service, and we were thinking about Father's Day, and even gender. I mean, is there any such thing, Father's Day, Mother's Day, People's Day, Grandparents' Day? How many biological fathers do we have in the room today? Yeah. And how many those of us who embody father energy are here in the room? Yeah. And mother energy. And friend energy.
Right.
And having the prayer chaplain stand and hold the space, oh, that is really beautiful. So, what would happen if we sent Mohini to a tiger therapist? What would be some of the questions the therapist would ask this tiger about changing her stripes?
It would be our brain, for sure.
Yeah.
We try to tell people what we want, who we are, why we need something different. Tell us, help us. I don't know if that's the true thing that we need to know, but we'll come to that.
And the tiger might not even know that those are the questions that you need, so the therapist might say, what are you feeling? What are you aware of? Do you realize that you're no longer in the cage and that the bars are no longer there? And the therapist might point out that she could have a choice. She could stay where she is and feel safe, or she could choose to be different, to change, but the price of freedom would not be small. We went to a birthday party. That's why we were a little slow this morning. We went to a birthday party last night. We could not go to. A good friend of ours had his 90th birthday. And this is a man who had been a successful Beverly Hills plastic surgeon, and then he followed his dream to move to Napa and open a winery, and he's a jazz pianist and an artist and a gourmet cook. He's just one of those Renaissance kind of men. And after this wonderful tribute to him at a beautiful restaurant, and all of those great accolades he got, he stood up and said, what's your message to all of us? And he said, go for it. Be that entrepreneur. Take those risks. Do something crazy. But if your heart is in it, do it. This is what Laura was saying. You have to do what's authentic to you. But again, the price wouldn't be small, because the tiger would have to really look at a lot of her issues. She would have to look at her wild nature being crushed, being forced to live in this small cage. She would probably discover a whole lot of rage. So I want to tell you, this is actually a tiger yawning, because the pictures of the tiger roaring were so terrifying to me that I didn't want to have them up. So just imagine she's roaring. So she'd have to discharge all that rage and all that energy, and then eventually there'd be a lot of grief, right, resulting from what she'd lost, and she'd have to learn how to function in a new environment, and that recovery would take a while, that PTS. So that trauma, our credo is always, Hal and I, before we came into ministry, did something called Rolfing for many years, and many of you know what that is. But it was really about going back in and releasing a lot of those areas of tension and upset. And that whole idea of spiritual bypassing, you're familiar with? That's a new buzzword, you're familiar with that? This idea that we use our spiritual principles and language to just bypass what's really going on. Everything's wonderful, take it to prayer. There's no reality, it's really all one, and all that's true, and yet at the same time, we have to do this work. And so Mohini gets to do all this work. And she probably, of course, didn't have the choice to make for her own healing, but we do. So no matter what the past choices have been, there's always an opportunity to make a new choice. And we are in that every single day, living with with just what we've lived with, well, our whole 35 years together. You know what that's like? Anybody here long term?
I know.
Yeah, a few of us, because that is a path. And it is not an easy path, it's not a simple path, it's a real chosen path that we have to choose every single day. You know, through all sorts of things. And wow, to be prospered and to be blessed and authenticized by it has been quite wonderful. And this has been a very difficult 4 years for both of us. It seems like something has shifted lately. But I spent a lot of time being really pissed off. And resentful.
Some things new.
Yeah. And victimized and all that. And oh, you know, what I have to deal with. And he says up and he means down. And, you know, just all those little things. But then to just make that choice to transcend it is really something. So, would you like to say something? Because you know me, I could just keep going, baby.
I know.
So what's new?
So what's new, exactly? Same old, same old.
Well, one of the things that's really we're taught in our truth here, we're taught here at Unity, is that we can make the choice of what we want and what we don't want, and I think that's true. But I always wonder about what's behind that. What happens to spirit, or whatever we want to call spirit? What is it, and how does spirit help us, or how does spirit function for us without our brain? And we constantly continue talking about our brain when we're trying to do something. And
Do you mean our mind or our brain? Are you talking about our thinking?
Our thinking.
Our thinking?
Our thinking. And that's true, but we forget to what's really true underneath that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, what is spirit? We talk about it and we do think it, but what is it? And the thought is that whatever comes into our mind is what spirit is doing. So if it is trying to help you get to be another way, it's that thought that comes in, or that mind idea that comes in to help you do whatever you do. Now, it might be something that has to happen that doesn't happen because you want it to. Something else is going on for you. And it's a great gift for me to really grok that, to really get that idea of what spirit is for us and what we do with spirit, how we take it. And the work that the lion did in therapy is to talk with the brain, talk with the mind of how to do better or how to do what we want. That's what we go to. That's what we do our inner work for, is to find out for us what is coming up. But how did it get to that? How did we even know we wanted something? How do we know that? And that's the gift that we can get to learn about who we are and what our personage is.
Well, how do you
Does that
know
make
that?
sense?
How do you know
Well,
that?
I think that really happened to me a lot, to understand what spirit or God or whatever it is, because I have words like this.
We were trained, you know.
Yeah, we're trained. We are trained from the time we're kids.
But I mean, as ministers, we were trained to talk about this stuff.
That's
So
true.
it's like getting behind even that.
Good.
I think you're saying.
Good job.
Thank you, Judy.
So, what was the question?
How do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know?
I don't know how I know. I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows how we know. There's something that comes up and you take the next step and then you do something with it. And something else may come up and you do something else with it. And to trust ourselves that what's coming up in the moment, in the second, is who we are and what we have to share our lives with. But we have to come to that idea of spirit or of God or whatever we want to call it, and to trust that that's what's happening in our lives in this every second, every moment. And I think for me, what really, I think, brought it to a head from a time I was getting to it with my own spiritual work and my own work that I've done was after the stroke, when I didn't have anything. I couldn't even speak, and I had to accept what was going on, and then it took me to the next step, and each step was a time to learn. I couldn't speak, and so I had to learn how to speak, and what went on. What was it in me that pushed me to learn, and have my son who sat with me for a few days and talked to me with the
Dr.
Seuss books, and I was doing one sentence at it, one word at a time, one letter at a time, and that was my start to learn and to grow so I would be able to speak or have some kind of communication, or not. I had studied for years learning Spanish, 12 years going to different cultures to learn Spanish, and I was very fluent in that, and the stroke took it out. I lost it all. So now it's coming back a little bit, and I'm working a little more because I want to. Why did that come to me, that want to? Might have been my ego, might have been whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But something came to me so that I could go study and learn a little bit more to get it. And that's true with my life. And that's true with our lives, whether we realize it or not, is how can we take that energy that we get, the energy that we have about anything, where does that come from, and what will it do when we take that next step and the next step? It's a tough one sometimes. It's really tough for me to think that I'm not doing it.
Well, sometimes we need someone to hold the truth for us when we temporarily forget it.
Tell me more.
Well, we go off track and we need our partner, we need our spiritual community. I mean, isn't that why you're here? I mean, just walking in,
Amen.
I know what's held here, and I can just walk in here no matter how I'm feeling. I speak in a lot of churches, work in a lot of churches, and there's something so unique and palatable about this one.
Yeah.
That I feel, and I got to be here for 4 years every week. But that's why we need the teacher, the counselor, the minister, the father, that energy to remind us. And that was, just thinking about sacred service and thinking about Father's Day and thinking about all that. And then thinking about this book I've been hanging out with a while. In fact, Reverend Denise gave me this book for my birthday 2 years ago. And I looked at it a little bit, and then I actually read it this last year, the Book of Joy. Are you familiar with that? So that book is Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and thank you. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama came together to celebrate the Dalai Lama's 80th birthday in Dharamsala. And there was a fellow who, put it together in a book, that they wrote this book together. Now look at these guys. Fathers, one's the father of his people, one's actually a biological father. Fathers, if anybody has a challenge about choosing joy, these two men, and they've been really very inspirational. How do you find joy in the midst of some of this stuff? And this isn't just, let's just be happy and say yes. I love the idea of the law of attraction. Sometimes I feel like it's kind of here, when we want to get down into here. But I remember these guys and what they've had to live with. The Archbishop, he was asked how he managed fear during the dark days of apartheid when he received a lot of death threats. And he said, well, one did not do silly things like stand in front of a lit window at night, but one did have to say to God, if I'm doing your work, you better well jolly protect me. And then, nights of worry and insomnia, he said he would think about people all over the world who were also unable to sleep. And remember that helped him out a lot. So this idea of sacred service, what is that for you, Hal, this idea of sacred service? Because that's really what we're honoring here at Unity San Francisco this month. Sacred service. Because I just want to...
Before I say anything.
Before you say anything. When we met in Los Angeles in 1981, I think, and I lived in Miami, and Hal lived in Los Angeles. And we met briefly, sort of in a spiritual conference of some sort. Then we met again a year later in Colorado, still living in those. But what really drew us together was that was our life, was service. Was about what can we do to continue to raise our unconsciousness, move out of those patterns that held us from our family of origin, maybe what we brought back from past life, who knows. But how do we move out of that and serve as a whole? And I believe that's what brought us together, and we have to remember that a lot of times when we get mired in the myriad of choices that we have every day of where to put our attention. Sacred service.
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit.
Okay.
Because it's all sacred.
Yeah, well, that's true, isn't it?
I just want to say an experience that I had just come in today. And I think it just spoke to me. One of the things is just the energy that was present here, and the welcomeness that came was just very touching to me. But as I talked to one of the women here, Laura, who I've known for many, many years, and haven't seen her long, but she was telling me of an experience that she had as she was sharing with me, and I realized that in that second was some experience I had to find for my problem. I had a daughter that I was having some challenges with, and I need to do it, and I'm thinking all kinds of ways to do with it, and on and on. And in one moment you shared what was happening for you with authenticity and all realness. And it touched me. In that moment, in that second, I had a thought, but it was me listening to that thought, or listening to what was being done to me, that will give me, hopefully, to a next step of what I need to do. But how did that happen? How did that come where you spoke something to me that was very sincere, very something that was going on? And that happens to us all the time. We get something and we go, aha. And that's kind of what you were saying, and sharing in a different way of that. But it's the same idea. And I think that what we do and what we've done in our lives is those each moments of taking the next thing, and then we share with each other and take the next thing. But it's that first moment that says, oh, this is what I want to say, and this is what you do, and vice versa. We do that with our friends, with our people. And the more, I believe, is to be aware of what is happening as we get a something that moves us to another space, another thing to work with.
And so, sacred service. Sacred service, I believe,
sharing
is being absolutely witness to another.
Yeah.
What is better than being seen and being heard and being acknowledged for the true emotional, spiritual, intellectual, gifted individual that you are, that I am, that Hal is? What is holier than that? And I know that this ministry, this is what you do here. And I believe that's what we do in Unity, is we honor that. And we say, Namaste, the Christ in me, that is which is most holy and spiritual and true and authentic, honors and acknowledges and loves and holds dearly that same. And for me, it's that simple. And what we find often is when it's difficult to do that, that's when we get to see what our work is. Because if I can't look at you and look at you and look at you with that trust and that openness and that realness, if I can't do that, what is that mirror telling me about myself? And then I know what my work is. Isn't that fabulous?
I'll tell you.
So, might as well dance. So let's go ahead and take these concepts, this into our quiet time, into our meditation.